Just that, as we was communicating with you in the private chat, you seemed to make some statements which kind of concerned me, and
Yeah, I mean,
and I
you can
thought,
talk about
okay,
that. Yeah, we can talk about that because you mentioned about the Prime Minister of Israel visiting America, so I don't see anything wrong with that. So we can talk about that or anything else, but I'm not here to defend the killing of anybody. Obviously, um, I'm not here
see,
to stick up
you
for.
mentioned that you posed a question to me in private chat, and if you don't mind if I read it
No
out.
problem. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you said to me, "Do the Muslims have the Muslims' interests at heart?" And I'm thinking, is that aimed at as us here right now, sitting in the UK, and by the use of in South Africa? That question for me was really hurtful because we've been doing this stream for many weeks now, or months, if not, raising this awareness. So of course we take interest to heart. But we deal with the first question you mentioned regarding the Prime Minister of Israel visiting the US.
Do you
And
wanna leave that one for later? Because this one, like what you mentioned, I just want to say that that I typed that comment in when you guys were talking about Western governments not having Muslims' interests at heart. So I was talking on a political level, obviously never on a personal level. I don't even know you guys personally. So I'm talking about on a political level. I mean, how many Muslim nations are there? How much influence do they have? What has been the response from them? Where's the leverage? Where's the strategy? Where's the backup? People like yous, I commend you. I take my hat off to you. Yous are doing whatever you can to raise awareness and things like that in your own capacity. But I just think that if there's going to be a solution, and hopefully everybody's looking for a solution, so people can stop killing and being killed, it's going to come from a political, isn't it? And when we talk about the Muslim world, you have to think about the Arab world. You have to think about straight away Saudi Arabia, the Arab nations, yeah, other influential Islamic countries, yeah, Turkey, Iran, Pakistan. So, do they have the Muslims' interests at heart? Why should we? First look at the Western countries who've got a totally different culture or outlook or the way they view it. What about our own? And then here's something that's going to be controversial. Why is it that there's a? I mean, in my eyes, I feel like in the Muslim world, people seem to be nobody wants to criticize Hamas. Nobody wants to say, well, what they did was wrong or what they're doing is wrong or their part in this, because all of these kids who are dying and they're being blown up and everything that's happening, like what's this over? Like if we believe whatever was on the media, if Hamas started it, then there's something to be said there as well.
okay, so I gave you ample time. I never interrupted. I gave you enough time to speak, and I appreciate your, I can feel your passion and your questions, and I really want Brother Yusuf to unpack that, inshallah, and respond to what you just mentioned and some of the questions that you posed to everybody here. So, Brother Yusuf, if you want to unpack that, go ahead.
Yeah. No, this is the first time I think I'm interacting with Safaraz. Greetings, salam alaikum, Safaraz. I believe you don't stay in this. You don't stay in Coventry, do you?
No. Do you want to send us there?
Well, that's where my co-host brother Muhammad stays. He's in Coventry, so it takes someone from South Africa to get somebody in the United Kingdom in touch with another brother from the UK. But Safaraz, by the way, just for those out there, has been on my Open Islamic Debate Forum, which is a massive, well, I wouldn't say significant, but quite a popular WhatsApp group in South Africa. It's a subsidiary of the Open Debate Forum. We've had many debates over the years, but this is the first time I'm interacting with him on a personal level. I think, I kind of second the first point you made, that the Muslim leaders are not doing enough. I mean, there was a medical doctor that made the point on the Piers Morgan show that if Muslim armies had come and rescued the people of Gaza, or had basically gone and taken a position from a military point of view, nothing would have happened on the scale that you basically see. But leave that aside. Even if it means economic strangulation, if every single Muslim nation on earth, and there are about, I think, 62 or 64, at least as has been given by the Organization of Islamic Conference, were to economically strangulate Israel, economically strangulate them in light of the genocide that is basically happening, in light of the fact that there's not even something that could be viewed as indiscriminate bombing, because indiscriminate bombing gives a degree of respectability that the person just simply has a callous disregard for human life. Israel doesn't have a callous disregard for human life. They have a deliberate disregard for human life. And so the actions that you see here are inherently evil. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. There's a negligence, which is one factor where, oh, look, you've got the main aim. This is the argument being made by your peers and Piers Morgan on the right, that, look, they're just now concerned about the proportionality of how Israel is responding, which is total rubbish, because it's got nothing to do with proportionality. Our argument is that the attack and the slaughter and the mass murder and the destruction of hospitals and the destruction of schools and the destruction of museums and educational facilities is part and parcel of a deliberately attempted form of warfare, and in fact genocide, which clearly is a genocide, which my country, the legal minds in my country have proven, in my opinion, beyond reasonable doubt. And that is basically something which is happening. And in light of that, if there was an economic strangulation on Israel, or even on the United States, to suggest that, look, if it's Saudi, if it's the Emiratis, if it's Middle Eastern countries, even if it's some of the allies like Pakistan, for that particular matter. Of course, now with Imran Khan not being there, it's another boiled kettle of fish entirely in terms of the leadership. The corruption is tenfold with him being in jail. But the point is, there's a genuine economic strangulation against the United States, against Israel. Israel wouldn't think twice of doing what it is doing now, unbridled, because essentially the United States has given a green card to Israel. It's given a green light. I mean, although Biden hypocritically spoke about the fact that if you invade Rafah, that's a red line. They've invaded Rafah now for more than 2 or 3 weeks. And they've done slaughter after slaughter after slaughter. I've lost count of the slaughter. I mean, we're talking about this incident at the Nusayrat refugee camp. Just 2 days ago, there was something that happened at the school, the UNRWA school. And when I saw images of that, I couldn't make out the difference as to which. There's so many massacres that are taking place. You don't know which massacre is which massacre. You've now forgotten about, for example, the Flower Massacre. Nobody talks about the Flower Massacre. Although, if that had happened in Western Europe, it would be news for the entire year. But the Flower Massacre, where the starving people went and ran to the convoy, and then they were shot dead in the head by the Israelis opening their bullets on these unarmed civilians, people have forgotten about it. People forgot now about the massacre at the Jabalia refugee camp last year, and there were so many massacres there. One of the massacres, for example, was where Israel stated, look, there was a mistake. That was in December. The previous one, they stated that there were Hamas operatives. Then we have the situation at the very beginning of the slaughter where they bombed a hospital. And then they said, look, Israel, there was a global outcry. Israel made the point, look, we could, this was done by Islamic Jihad. Israel would never bomb hospitals. Why would we do such a thing? Because of the global outrage. Well, look at the situation now. Nobody even talks about Israel bombing hospitals. They destroyed every single hospital and medical facility to total smithereens in Gaza. It's been flattened, totally flattened. So I second the point that the Muslim countries are not doing anything. We're sitting by like sitting ducks, like the Hadith basically prophesied, doing nothing, saying nothing. And the people that are basically speaking out are the populations of these respective countries, are people like you and me, like Brother Muhammad, like on these podcasts. But leadership are doing very little. I mean, even the king of Jordan, Queen Rania, she basically made the point, and she was condemnatory of Israel in the earlier stages sometime last year. But after Iran gave adequate warning, and they sent these glorified fireworks towards Israel, I think about, when was it now, a month or two ago, and it took about 24 hours to reach there. Jordan intercepted, even though they've got the Iron Dome. I mean, it was just a symbolic action by Iran, whatever one says about Iran, and I'm not a supporter of the Iranian state in any way, shape, or form, nor am I a supporter of any of the other Middle Eastern states. I think they're all despots and problematic. But I'm saying, regardless of their own status quo, if they had the moral proclivity to stand up to Israel, to put this small, tiny country, which wields so much of power, so much of control globally, none of this would have happened. So I second that particular point. This the other issue, the second part of your question about Hamas. I'm not necessarily a supporter of Hamas, and a lot of people, like, for example, Mahdi Hassan, have questioned, for example, the origins of Hamas in terms of how a formerly benevolent charity organization, arose in the 80s out of nowhere and were initially supported by Israel. In fact, up to recently, there were funds that were being channeled via Qatar through Israel to Hamas. And so there was a symbiotic relationship that Hamas did have with Israel. And the reason Hamas was kept there was purely because of the fact that you've got these split now between two authorities, the Palestinian Authority and, of course, Hamas. And that would ensure there can never be a unified Palestinian state. So it served the Israelis well. But be that as it may, I just want to challenge the notion that you raised, which is that many observers, many political analysts are well aware of the fact that structures of oppression use the term terrorism or terrorist as a kind of a pejorative label to delegitimize resistance movements that have, unheard, yet they have valid grievances. Noam Chomsky, the famous Noam Chomsky, who, if I am lucky enough with Brother Muhammad Prayer, we may even get him, he's probably 94, we'd like to get him on the stream at some point in the future. He made the point that, if they do it, meaning the non-West, it's terrorism. But if we do it, it's counterterrorism. So that's a historical universal. So, for example, when you have been hearing over months now for an end, do you condemn Hamas? Answer the question, are they a terror group? This kind of rubbish, when Jeremy Corbyn and all these people came on the Piers Morgan show, this was a question. The aspect is skewed because it is being viewed through a skewed prism, with the critical issue at play being the restrictive usage of the terminology terrorism, and more particularly in the sense that when you make these comparisons, Israel is a state actor, and Hamas, at least for a significant period of time, was a non-existential threat, was a small non-state actor arising amongst a group of people who are historically occupied. And in terms of international law, anyone who is occupied has the right to engage in physical resistance against the occupier. So this begs a question then, does Israel have the right to self-defense? And the answer was answered quite fascinatingly. We don't have time to play the clip by, what's her name? Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on Palestine, who made the point that under Article 51 of the UN Charter, a nation state cannot invoke the right to self-defense against a territory or a group of people that it occupies. So, for example, if United Kingdom, Britain came and they bombed Israel, and now Israel basically retaliates, well, they could make the argument, theoretically, that Israel is acting in self-defense. But when you've got the Gaza Strip, which is not a country, but is under occupation by a group of refugees who were kicked out of the very land that you have taken over and now are placing them in an area and a concentration camp where they are occupied, then you can't raise the point of self-defense. So I think the issue is in relation to Hamas. I would criticize Hamas purely from a political point of view, maybe in terms of, if they come to power in the same way that I'll criticize the ANC government. There were legitimate resistance organization during the heights of apartheid. They certainly committed atrocities. The ANC government, that is, including Nelson Mandela, including his wife, Winnie Mandela. In fact, she killed a doctor who his son is married to my cousin, a well-known doctor, Dr. Asfat, Abu Bakr Asfat, in the 80s. So this was an atrocity committed by the ANC government. They committed atrocities, but they were still viewed as a legitimate liberation movement. And so the same principle, is applicable to Hamas and all these other particular factions. The problem that we've got is that Western media and Western society wants to put Hamas on the same level as ISIS, and nothing could be further from the truth. From an ideological point of view, groups like ISIS, Boko Haram, Janjaweed in Sudan, Al-Shabaab in Somalia, I mean, these are death cults. I have absolutely no hesitation in condemning them as total and utter death cults. Hamas, on the other hand, I mean, ideologically at least, ISIS, a group like ISIS would be opposed to them because they view them as non-Islamic. If you look at some of the Hamas leadership, I mean, most of them are in suits and jackets. They're dressed in a Western style. They've got I wouldn't say liberal, but they've got a far more liberal understanding and approach to Islam than groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or the Taliban for that particular matter. They've got a far more liberal approach. Ideologically, they are more closer leaning to the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, that's Ikhwan Muslimin, and they come from that product. They're kind of a byproduct of that. So they should not be categorized in the category of death cults like Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and so on, that just kill for the sake of killing and just engage in sanguinary warfare and mass murder, and they murder their own civilians. They murder Muslims like ISIS. I mean, we clearly saw cases of rape and rape of children, and we saw the images of the brutal massacres that ISIS, in fact, committed. We've never seen anything of that scale in relation to Hamas, although after October 7th, the Israeli Hasbara and propagandist machine was at full acceleration in terms of the propaganda that there was these mass rapes. Although now there's been, it's been proven that even the rapes were a hoax, or that there were mutilations or beheading of babies. All that was rubbish. There was no beheading. They made the point there was beheading of babies. There was mass rapes. Hamas burned civilians. On all these 3 points, they've been proven as false. No babies were beheaded. In fact, there's only one child that was killed in the crossfire. No mass rapes occurred. And in relation to the burning, we now know as a fact, which Israel has confirmed, that Israel instructed and had helicopter gunships that had infiltrated the various kibbutz and opened fire on both the hostages as well as the Hamas operatives. So Mark Regev, in his interview with Mahdi on MSNBC, confirmed on record that there were burned bodies, but he made a disclaimer. He said they were burned by Israel, but his disclaimer was that, look, these were all Hamas militants that were burned. My question is, how do you distinguish whether the burned body was a Hamas militant or was an Israeli civilian? When your own guy, Douglas Murray, that scumbag from the United Kingdom, on most of these platforms he's been on, he said he was in a hospital in Tel Aviv seeing burnt Israeli civilians. How did he see that? So I'm saying that, look, there's certain things that happened on October 7th. Because the international community has failed to develop a comprehensive definition of terrorism that incorporates state entities like Israel, so they don't call Israel a terrorist. And so that unfortunately causes non-state actors to be put under the microscope of scrutiny. But yet in reality, Brother Safraz and those viewers out there, the violent crimes committed by Israel supersede any of the atrocities that Israel commits. So to answer the question is, should Hamas have done what they did on October 7th? The point is, well, what about October 6th? What about October 5th? What about October 4th? Israel was already killing people on the West Bank. Just one last point. One last point, Safar. I just want to make this last point, and then you can comment. 2023, before October 7th, was viewed as the most violent year in the past decade. There were close to about 200 children, 200 people that were killed on the West Bank in an area where there was no Hamas. There was a pogrom that took place at the at one of the camps. And then, of course, there were systematic bombings that took place on Gaza. And from Hamas's point of view, their argument was that they've tried the peaceful negotiation. Look at what happened at the Great March of Return in 2019. We asked this to a Christian brother. In the 2019 Great March of Return, the Palestinians just simply walked to the fence in a Gandhi-like mass symbolic return to the land they were kicked out. And they were shot dead in cold blood by the Israelis. So from the Hamas's point of view, their response would be that their aim or their initial objective was just simply to take hostages so that they could get a bargain of hostages that are being kept in dungeons, in torture dungeons by the Israelis.
Right, thanks for that. So, there's 2 points I'm going to focus on. You mentioned, what about October 6th? What about, October 5th? So what you're saying is, what about everything that happened before that? And what you've done then is you've backed that up with certain atrocities that the Israelis have apparently done. So my question is still there. If this is all true, and if Israel was persecuting the Palestinians, not even in Gaza, in other places, and they were doing all of that, then why would Hamas be so stupid to then go and try to take hostages and pick a fight with people and pick a fight that you just can't win? So what? And so that's like self-destruction. That's giving them all the justification that they need. Because if you're already saying that they're that evil and they're like indiscriminately killing people, if that's how it's going to get framed, that's what the Israeli regime was doing, then that just proves Hamas is even more stupid. Because, like, I'll give you an example. If you've got a bully in the playground who's beating you up, there's no teachers, there's no friends, there's nothing, you're going to get beat up, I would run. I wouldn't go and stand there and challenge this bully or swear at him or whatever, because I'm going to get my face punched in. So whatever's happening now, what's happened for the last 8 months, it's getting called genocide, and we see everything that's happening here with body parts everywhere. My original question was, isn't Hamas
just before that? Do you at least just before that, just snap? You agree, Sarfaraz, that what Israel is doing now fulfills the definition of genocide? Am I correct?
Oh yeah, I've got no problems with that.
So we don't have a dispute on that, at least.
No. What I'm saying is, Hamas has got a huge part to play in that. They've got blood on their hands. They've gone and taken hostages. As long as they've got hostages, this is going to continue. Israel is going to continue doing what they're doing as long as they've got the hostages. Hamas can't win. Hamas is gambling that somehow Israel is going to stop and start negotiating. But they're gambling with the lives of the Palestinians. That's what they're doing. And it's the Palestinian children who are getting blown to bits. I'll let you continue.
Well, let me respond. Let me respond to that. Can I just get a glass of water before I give you a reply? Brother Mohammed, if you want to have a few words, I'm coming right now.
Yeah. Sorry, Sarfaraz. I just want to mention and remind the people, please, let's get this platform to a bigger scale. Let's start sharing the streams. Let's do our bit for what we can do for our brothers and sisters in Gaza.
Yeah.
And yes, help them. And the way we can help is by sharing and liking the stream. Let's get the viewers up. Mashallah, I can see a slow, steady pace of viewers increasing, but we still need to reach out more and more, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair to all the mods and stuff for your contribution. Brother Yusuf, you're back, mashallah.
Yeah, just a quick, firstly, it's Sarfaraz, I'm just looking at the time here, but it's an interesting point. I just want to ask you this. Do you believe that people have the right to physically resist, even if it takes a military objective? I mean, because let's accept this premise. Do people who are under occupation and being kept in a concentration camp have the right to stand up and resist physically and militarily if they have developed the ability to do that? I mean, liberation movements are based on that particular premise, to liberate them, freedom is never given. It's always taken.
You used the key
And
word.
my first question to you is: Would you grant the
You
Palestinians
used the key
have the
word
right
ability.
and self-defense? Safaras?
Yeah, I've answered no,
Are you there?
and I'll qualify
Sorry?
that because you use the word ability. You said, do they have the right? If they have the ability, now they don't have the ability, so they does not have the right to play with Palestinian lives. Hamas doesn't have the right to go into Israel thinking they're clever, kidnapping people, thinking they're going to use them as human bargaining chips, and then it's the Palestinians who are getting blown to bits, right? They don't have the right to do that.
So my question to you: If on the other hand, Hamas did have the military capability to overcome Israel, you'd support that initiative. Am I correct?
If it was going to be a fair fight,
If they
and they
succeeded,
just
then in
cause,
getting the Palestinians and overcoming the Israeli belligerency and leading to a situation whereby Israel would now be forced to either have a one-state solution or alternatively a two-state solution, you'd support that resistance. Your question now is they don't have the ability to resist.
Yeah, what I'm saying is any campaign for justified campaign for freedom and for peace is obviously everybody wants that. Everybody wants to stand up for their rights and things like that. But we're not dealing with that scenario. The way you have already framed the scenario, you have already said, well, what about October 6th? What about October 5th? You have already said things such as, the Americans have given the Israelis the green light or the green card to do what they want. So the situation that you're dealing with here is you have already admitted that Israel has got a hostile policy towards the Palestinians, and they've already been basically trying to wipe them out. So if that's true, then what Hamas has done is even more dumb. And
Yeah, but do you agree that that is indeed the case? I'm gonna address the issues on Hamas.
I don't know.
Well, then you need to read more on the subject, Brother Safa. With respect, I'll give you certain points here. Hamas came into actual, and I would say superficial power because it was not real power. They always present. Let's look at it from this perspective, and I'll give you certain timelines since 2005 to date, where I would point out that your argument would be problematic. Israel points the idea that Gaza could have been like a modern-day Singapore, which is total rubbish because when Hamas came to power, and they came into power superficially, Israel then immediately imposed a siege on Gaza because they didn't expect Hamas to come to power in 2005. So they cut off all food supply. They put a siege on the air, on the land, on the borders. Everything is fully under control by Israel. So basically you had a situation where Hamas were the kind of sole custodians, but they were now being still under legal occupation, even under United Kingdom law and under the auspices of Israel. In other words, Israel even dictated what the food calorie count could enter Gaza or not. That was the situation from then. And then there were repeated bombing campaigns by Israel over the years, Operation Pillar of Defense, Operation Cast Lead, I forget the other name, the operation in 2014. But here's the point, is that throughout the time that Hamas has been in power with Israel, Hamas has in fact surprisingly adopted an open and accommodating approach. It had to, because that's how Israel funneled certain aid and assistance that it would get through to Hamas via Qatar. So basically, from the time that it basically came into power in 2005, Hamas made the point, strangely enough, which people don't know, that whilst they don't recognize Israel's formation as legitimate, they were willing to accede to a Palestinian state based on 1967 borders, which was a massive compromise. Israel rejected that. Secondly, there's an article and a book written by a journalist, Zachary Foster, that details the fact that any kind of meaningful attempt for a peace process between Israel and Hamas has always been broken down by Israel. For example, he looks at the fact that Hamas After the suicide bombings in the early 90s, if you recall the suicide bombings, Hamas sought to have a truce with Israel in 1988. Israel refused it. In 2006, Hamas put down a truce with Israel. Israel again broke that and rejected it. In 2008, they did the same. In 2012, they did the same. In 2017, they did the same. In 2019, Hamas did the same, and they allowed what they would call the Great March of Return. If you look, you're familiar with the Great March of Return, where these particular individuals, these Palestinians, walked to the border, and Israel just mowed them down in cold blood. So what it appears to me, then the message that Israel is sending, that if you come with any kind of peace deal, any kind of truce, any kind of jarring effort in trying to settle and resolve the conflict, Israel's choice has always been that it prefers war to peace, because by war, Israel amasses territories. By war, Israel basically takes over land and kills more people. And if you basically give Israel a finger, they take the entire hand. So from the Palestinian point of view, at least leave aside the Palestinian point of view, from Hamas's point of view, just over the past decade, there's been more than several attempts where Hamas has basically laid down the gauntlet. And on every single attempt, Israel basically has refused it. So in its false narrative, and so in its misplaced public relations agenda, which I don't think a person of your caliber would want to believe, but Israel would want the world to believe that if Hamas simply laid down its weapons, peace will be possible. And that's an absurd claim. It's a claim which is reductio ad absurdum, because it is belied by the basic historical facts. Not 75 years. I'm not talking about 75 years of massacres and occupation and so on. I'm just talking about the past decade, from 2010. We're talking about 2010.
So what you've established is the power imbalance.
So the issue is this. If Hamas were to theoretically disappear today, Israel would continue expanding its sphere of occupation. And more than that, if you look at its actual plan, if you look at the plan for Israel, I want to share this plan for you, that in 2014, they spoke about already the resources and the mineral wealth, and certainly the oil wealth that is on the coast of Gaza. Israel and the extremists within the Israeli regime have made it clear more often than not that the aim and the occupation, certainly the far right, is essentially the occupation and the total elimination of Gaza, and that there needs to be forced voluntary migration one way or the other.
Right. So what you're establishing is that there's a imbalance of power. It's totally one-sided. Israel can do what they want. And the second thing you've established is Israel actually doing what they want. So if that's true, for example, because I don't need to debate any of this or question it, then my point is still valid, isn't it? That if Israel are doing whatever they want, and they can do whatever they want, and if they want all of that land, then still what Hamas are doing is just going to accelerate what you're saying Israel wants to do. So in all of these situations, if they couldn't do it diplomatically, and they definitely can't do it militarily, then the only other option would have been to move, wouldn't it? So what right? Hang on, I'll just finish. What right does Hamas have? What right does Hamas have to put Palestinian children, their lives on the line, just a roll of a dice that we're going to go and kidnap a few people and everything's going to go well? Because everything that you're saying, you're building a picture of how basically evil Israel is, right? And everything they've done, and you're backing it up with all of this history. That just shows how stupid Hamas is. Because if that's true, what you're saying, and they knew that and they lived that, then what you would do is you wouldn't poke that bear. You wouldn't give them an excuse to come and kill everybody.
Here's my question to you. Here's my question to you, and I want you to deal with this aspect, right? And I want you to seriously consider this. So my question to you in the circumstances would then be, is that if you've got an apartheid force, which Israel has now been internationally declared an apartheid state, if you get an apartheid force that refuses to submit to international legal standards, has not accepted the ICJ or the ICC as legitimate bodies, continues to expropriate territories with total, complete impunity illegally, are you able to appreciate why militant groups arise in the occupied territories. I mean, the Palestinian fighters, and it's not just Hamas, because there's the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, there's Islamic Jihad. The Palestinian fighters have not adopted the path of violence for its own sake, but as a kind of a necessary means to support the little that remains of their homeland. And all I'm asking for you and others is that empathy is the only thing that is required to understand the impetus of Palestinian resistance. Because
but I don't think that's working for them.
Let me finish this point, Taban. That is the same quality that the scumbag Israeli Prime Minister, this bastard Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, who is more dangerous than Netanyahu. Netanyahu is the bastard dog you can see. Barak is the more sophisticated animal behind closed doors. But he made a remark to the fantastic Haaretz journalist Gideon Levi. This is what Ehud Barak stated. He says that if I was a Palestinian, this is what Barak said, if he was a Palestinian at the right age, at some stage, he would have entered one of the organizations and fought from there, and later would have certainly tried to influence from within the political system. I mean, the problem is that the Palestinians support the resistance. Can you understand the fact that resistance will continue in any struggle, not just the Palestinian context, but in any human struggle, Sarfaraz? Resistance will continue as long as the unjust status quo remains in place. Now, for you to say Hamas
resistance
did something,
will continue if people are alive. What you're dealing with here, you are trying to, from what I'm picking up here, it seems to be like people want to be right, or they want to fight for their rights, and it's about being what's right and what's wrong. But what I'm talking about is who's alive and who's dead. I'm not talking about who's right and who's wrong.
My question
that
is, my question is this: you give me an example. Let's assume Hamas did nothing. Let's assume Hamas did nothing on October 7th, right? Do you believe then that the status quo should continue? Because without Hamas, Israel is still killing civilians. So what's your solution? What is your solution? What is your solution to the door to peace?
To get out of there? To give up? Give the land up?
Give the land up.
But Sarfaraz, that's ethnic cleansing, because that now fulfills
Sarfaraz, are you from Pakistan? Are you from Pakistan? You know where India and Pakistan...
That's ethnic cleansing, Sarfaraz. That's
crazy,
ethnic cleansing.
Right,
I can't believe you said that, bro.
Listen. Yeah, I knew that would be...
Where should they move? Okay, where would they move to? No, I want to get this. I want to follow. I want to have this conversation with you. You say they should move. Where should they move to?
Well, let's talk then. Right.
Okay, where should they move
so here we go. Okay, hang on. Right. So what we have here is you've already discussed about empathy that you have for the Palestinians, for the resistance, what you're terming as the resistance. Now that resistance that you're terming, right? You're talking about armed resistance. You're talking about fighting the Israelis, fighting the occupation, and stuff like that, right? How's that going? It's not going very well, is it? It wasn't very well thought of.
Would you support that if it went well?
Right, hang on.
Would you support that? Well, yeah, but Sarfaraz, would you support that if it went well? Be open. Now, no one's going to arrest you. I can say I would support that.
I wouldn't support kidnapping, would I? I wouldn't support what they did.
Fair enough. I get the point. And I also have certain reservations. We were chatting with Norman Finkelstein.
Yeah. So this is why.
I get that.
Yeah, so
I would
let
support.
Me talk then.
Let's agree on one point. If Hamas were to just have come in and kidnapped soldiers and killed only soldiers, that's game on. I have no problem with that, and you wouldn't have a problem with that. I do understand.
How was that?
That is game on. I mean, no, but hold on. An Israeli soldier is a legitimate target for resistance. Would we agree on that?
It's not game
international law.
I can't agree on that. That's ridiculous.
What is ridiculous?
Let's deal with the point that you were saying. You want to like.
Okay, let's separate.
Because you've got a group, right? Hamas.
Okay, where can they move to when Israel is not allowing them to move anywhere?
Okay, thanks for that. Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Right. I knew you were going to say this, but you need to give me time to talk now. right?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
But answer the question. Where should they move to?
Just before
Yeah, I've heard
you answered that, we've got a couple of people
Yeah, I am.
backstage. Yeah, I know you are, brother. Not a problem. But we got a couple of people backstage. This will be,
Okay.
if you don't mind, Yusuf, the last back and forth. If you wanna, and then we got other people backstage. Go ahead, Sarfraz.
Right. So basically,
Go ahead.
what you were saying is that there's only one option, which is to fight. Okay. And I'm saying, no, there's another option, which is to move. Okay. Then you're trying to counter that with, well, where should they move? And Israel's not letting them move, right? So what I'm going to ask you is, we've heard so much from yourselves and other people for years now, because this thing has been going on for decades. We've heard so much about how bad the Israelis are and how the Palestinians are being treated and how the land is being taken step by step. But tell you what, I've never heard anything from the Palestinians to say we've appealed to go for Egypt, and I might be wrong, so you can correct me. We've, for example, I'm just using Egypt as an example, to take us, to save us, give us refugee status or something like that. Because what I'm saying here is, I'd rather be a refugee and alive than being blown to bits. What's happening now? What's happening now is not the answer. And you've already said that Israel are going to keep on doing what they're doing. So if that's true, then the only option that they have is either to stay and die or move and live. Now, stay and dying is more like ethnic cleansing to me. And moving and living, that seems more like resistance.
Egypt won't allow them in.
Yeah, so where's all of this? Where's all of the hoo-ha? Hang on.
I'll give you my solution.
Hang on. Where's all the uproar and where's all the passion against, for example, Egypt? Then, why is it always
because it's
the
not
West,
because it's not?
West
I'll tell you why. You asked me where's the uproar. Your question is I got your question because this is a question. This is a typical talking point that raises why won't Egypt take them? This is what this swine Douglas Murray came to South Africa. He took a journalist to task on that point. Firstly, Egypt won't take them. Egypt has closed its borders. But secondly, Egypt is not responsible under international law. It is the occupying power that is responsible for the people that it occupies. Now, my solution to you is, why don't we just get rid of the Gaza Strip? There's no longer Gaza Strip as in a Gaza Strip as an occupied territory. Why don't we just get rid of the West Bank totally as an occupied territory? There's no longer a West Bank. Why don't we just simply have one whole nation state like a South African state where Jews and Palestinians can stay and move wherever they can, and the entire Israeli regime is disbanded and you have a single state of one man, one vote? Will that not be the ideal solution? Where you have a situation where Israelis can stay where they want to. They want to stay in Gaza, they can stay in Gaza. The Palestinians can stay where they want to. If they want to stay in Tel Aviv, they can stay in Tel Aviv because effectively that's where they come from. Why don't we have a single situation whereby, as opposed to kicking them out of Egypt into Egypt, which Egypt is a different country, a different nationality, a different land. They don't come from Egypt. They come from proper Israel, proper Eretz Israel. Why don't we have a situation where you have one total unitary nation state? Why won't Israel accept that? And you have one man, one vote. Hamas is willing to accept that.
As long as it stops people dying, that sounds good to me.
Why is this bastard regime not willing to accept such a simple solution? We in South Africa lived under apartheid. I was too young back then. We now have a situation that there's one man, one vote. The blacks were kept. The blacks were kept in a position.
Yeah, but the Palestinians can't just
are in a worse situation than the Palestinians. The Palestinians are in a worse situation than the South African blacks. You said they should move. Why can't, if it's being bombed and destroyed, why can't the occupying power allow the occupied people come back to the land from where they were originally kicked out of? Why can't that happen? Is that not a legitimate, reasonable, sane solution to the problem?
Yeah. So what we have is what you've just said there. That's let's just say that's the solution. And if that can't happen, because I think you don't think that's going to happen, as judging from your comments. So if that's not going to happen,
why won't it happen? Why won't it happen? Why won't it happen, Sarfraz? Why won't that happen?
Well, judging from your comments, the way you're talking,
No. I don't control Israel, Safraz. I don't control it. Why it won't happen is because you've got thugs like Bezalel Smotrich and Netanyahu and his regime.
Okay, so you don't believe
know,
that solution,
Brother Muhammad. No, I don't want you to move. I don't want you to move. Brother Muhammad, can you play the clip by Smotrich on the screen so Safraz can see the latest clip from last week? I sent you a clip on Smotrich. Are you able to play that clip? Because he raises the same issue which Brother Safraz says. Exactly the same point. Can you play
Is it the one that you sent me today? The one that you sent me today?
The one I sent you today. The one by Smotrich, the last one I sent you.
While you're getting the clip on,
אבל מה הפתרון לעזה? מה הפתרון לסוגיה כל כך מסובכת הזאת?
כיבוש, התיישבות ועידוד הגירה. רק בצורה הזאת אנחנו יכולים לפתור את הבעיה של עזה. לכבוש את כל השטח, להתיישב בכל השטח ולעודד הגירה, מרצון כמובן, של כמה שיותר אנשים שיגעו למדינות אחרות. אנחנו צריכים לחיות בביטחון.
Can you see that? You heard what the scumbag said. So this scumbag basically is talking about this bastard is talking about ethnic cleansing, and he's talking about voluntary migration, similar to what you are saying. But that fulfills the definition of ethnic cleansing and international law.
Yeah, but you're talking about international law, right? But then you will also admit that these guys are going to ignore international law, right?
Yes, they will.
Yes. So there you go then. So the solution that you propose, you don't even believe in it yourself, okay? And you don't think
I don't believe in it, but I don't believe in it. But Israel will not allow it.
So you're talking,
why can Israel not have a single state?
Yeah, but Yusuf, you're talking about what's right and what's wrong, what should be and what shouldn't be, what's ethical and what's not ethical. And what I'm talking about is who's alive and who's dead, life and death. So when it comes down to life and death, it doesn't matter what the rules are. The priority is to keep people alive. It's the priority. It's to stop children.
I just want to ask a question, and it's a common question. You know, if some thugs were going to come into my house, maybe 3 or 4, and they're going to kill my kids and rape my wife, do you think I'm justified in trying my best to be honest, I'm pretty active, I'm pretty fit. So do you think I'm in my rights to defend my home, my wife, my children? Or should I just say, tafaddal, bismillah, ahlan wa sahlan, and say, come on, take everything? What would you do?
What you should do is you should get your wife and the kids, get in the car and drive off and let them have the house. You should save your life. That's what you should do. Let them have the house, let them have the TV, let them have the iPad.
What if they don't give you a chance to leave? What if they don't give you a chance to leave, Safaraz?
Then you don't have an option, then, do you? Then the question's not valid.
Let me make the analogy first. Let's assume these robbers come and then they take over your house, but they keep you to stay in the toilet. So the toilet vicinity is the only place where you can stay and live. But it's your house at the end of the day. But they keep you in the toilet and they take over the entire house, the entire living space, take over your money. Are you saying we should just simply, is the Islamic way to just simply run away? Because if they were to run away,
no, it's not about running away. See, what you're doing there is you're using emotive language. It's not about running away. It's about saving your life. And you mentioned Islam. Now, can I ask you, in Islam, are you allowed to eat the flesh of swine?
Of course not.
Are you allowed to eat it to save your life?
Of course, under certain exceptions. There are exceptions.
Thank you. So to save your life, saving your life, right, trumps everything. Saving your life trumps everything. Prayers, the lot. So saving your life and right. So I don't need to keep repeating it. So what we need to be focusing on here is not who's right and who's wrong. Not about well, I've got my rights, but the children are blown to bits. It's not about that. It's not about land and things like that and possessions. It's about how are you going to stop this suffering, right? And the only way.
Okay. So let me go with that. Let me say I agree with you. Let's say I agree with you, right? Let's say I'm just saying hypothetically, I'm playing the devil's advocate, that I agree with this argument that, okay, we get them. Somehow or the other, some other country gets them, if that's possible, which is not possible, but let's assume that happens. What happens to Israel then? You basically rewarded Israel for their belligerency and their apartheid regime and their massacres.
There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it.
So we have to accept it. So we have to accept the status quo then, right? Even though the Quran tells us to fight against tyranny and oppression.
Does it? Hang on.
You are saying we have to accept the status quo.
Hang on. Did the Quran criticize the children of Israel when they were being persecuted by the Pharaoh?
Of course.
So no, the Quran never criticized the children of Israel for it.
No, it gives a critique on them. We discussed this aspect later on.
The critique was on Pharaoh and what Pharaoh did, but when you've got children who are being born and the Pharaoh's killing them, you can't, and families are defenseless and helpless, you can't criticize them for being.
So what you're saying, there, Safraj,
We should just give up.
When the
Give up
pagans were persecuting the Muslims and the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ and his companions should have said, you know what, guys, you can have Mecca. I'm going to save my life, and I'm going to the
That's what he did. He did do that.
He didn't.
Hang on.
For us.
Oh, so did he not go to Medina?
No, of course there was this temporary migration.
So there you go. No, hang on.
Migration. But there were some of the companions still there. Some of the companions were still in Mecca and getting persecuted because they couldn't leave because they never had the means.
So the ones who could leave did leave, didn't they?
So they would have just give up their faith and said, "Take
your
faith, take everything."
Hang on. It's not about faith. It's not about faith. It's about life and death. Okay. So
but for them, faith and life is the same.
No,
is the
that's their choice.
The
then
akhirah is the main thing. Akhirah is the main thing.
Like, hang on. Listen. Are you saying to me, if a Palestinian, right, could move, right, from Palestine and stop being ethnically cleansed, and if they took that opportunity and moved, are you saying to me that they would lose their faith and Allah would be annoyed with them?
Nobody said
that.
No, that's what you're implying.
Hold on. So if you were in prison, brother, and all these guys who saw you as fresh meat.
Listen, I'll be campaigning to come out of prison.
Are you happy just to drop your shorts and say, "Yeah, go ahead, guys"? Life
hang on.
Death.
I'd be campaigning to come out of prison. Listen, I'd be campaigning to come out of prison, right? I don't see many campaigns for people to come out of prison here.
Okay, but my question to you, Safraz, is what happens to Israel? Okay, these people move. They
Israel win.
What happens to Israel?
Israel win. They get the land. They get all of it.
So they win. But and morally, do you view them as right, as correct, as ethical, or you still view them as immoral? They win through their immorality. You agree with me?
No, I don't.
And massacres.
Yeah, but listen. Let's just say they win through immorality, the way you put it. But
let's just say, Safraz, you have to agree that they do win through immorality. Because they are forcibly migrating people. Firstly, they kick them out of their own land. Then they dump them in occupied concentration camps. Then they kick them out of the concentration camp.
As long as they're going to be alive, as long as the Palestinians, whoever's remaining, as long as they're going to be alive and the ethnic cleansing and the genocide stops, then that's good enough.
So what about the Palestinians that are on the West Bank? Should they then also be removed?
If they're going to face genocide and the choice is between genocide, right, stay and be genocided, or move and live, they should move and live.
Well, they're facing apartheid right now. They're not facing genocide. They're being killed, but they're facing sporadic killings, imprisonment, administrative detention, and apartheid-like conditions.
I'd try to get out of there. I would be trying to get out of there.
Yeah, but I mean, then should we have done the same in South Africa? We were facing apartheid conditions. Should all the blacks have just left South Africa and gone to the north, gone to Zimbabwe, gone to Botswana, gone to other parts of the world? Would we have had a solution in South Africa if we just succumbed to the white bastard regime and stated, look, let everything be kumbaya. You whites wanted it. We give you white dogs everything. Because these are these white Jews. I mean, these Jews in Israel, they're not Arab Jews or Semitic Jews. They are white Jews. They are Jews from Europe and Germany. So
it doesn't matter to me who they are. What matters is what people can do.
Give it to everybody. All these white supremacists, whatever the white man wants, we give it to him. I mean, this is the kind of slave-like mentality you want to internalize.
Hang on a minute.
The blacks have done that.
Hang on. Yara, listen, right. What we're dealing with here is what everybody's complaining about is the killings, yeah?
Yeah.
These killings, you all know.
Well, not just the killings. I mean, not just the killings. The occupation. It's not just the killings are one level. It's the killings.
Yeah, but right now right now it's really, the reason why we're talking about it is because since the 7th of October, it's escalated, hasn't it? And since before the 7th of October, not too many people were using the word genocide, and since then they have been. So the situation that you have is whatever Hamas is doing now, it's a flawed strategy. It was a mistake in the first place. They've gambled with Palestinian lives. They've failed miserably. They've got blood on their hands. They're responsible. They've got a part to play with what's happening there. They've got
But does
responsibility.
Israel have blood on its hands?
Yeah, of
Does
course,
Israel
they do.
has
Of
blood on
course,
its
yes,
hands?
of course. Whoever's
Yeah.
doing the killing and getting people killed, it's both sides. You've got to look at this as a system. One group of people have gone in there, kidnapped people, brought them back. They're getting bombed now for 8 months. All these killings are happening, which doesn't look like it's going to stop. And they're holding on to supposed hostages, and whose lives are being played with. Who were the ones who were going to get bombed and killed? It's going to be little children. So the only way this is going to stop is if they give the hostages back. So all of this, some sort of sympathy people
But
have.
they proposed that. Safra, I need to correct you on this falsehood. The first week when they got the hostages, Hamas made the proposal. They said, look, we've got these hostages which are taken. We want to now sit and do a deal with Israel. We will give you these hostages. Hamas made the proposal, provided you need to now release the Palestinian children that are being kept in Israeli detention and Israeli custody. Israel says, no, we're not doing it. We're going to bomb the shit out of you. Forgive my language. And that's exactly what they started doing. So the first week of October 7th,
Hang on.
the first week, Hamas said, we are here to give you the hostages, but surely we need the rights. Look, here's the point. This is the issue. I just want to bring this point, is that the first point, what you are basically saying is that essentially you're making the argument that Hamas is a proscribed group, according to certain Western governments, not all, certain Western governments. And that does not entail that the political ambitions of the Palestinians must be curtailed. Because the problem I've got with your argument in its entirety is this, is that by denying the Palestinian right to statehood or self-determination, simply because Hamas rules them, because you're making the argument, well, they should get out, without a doubt, it's a short-sighted, it's a hasty conclusion. Because just like any other human society out there, the Palestinians have a right to form and rule their own independent state. You've got a list of General Assembly resolutions which was passed by the United Nations over the past 20th century. In fact, there's a lawyer that I'll send you an article maybe on our group when we have the time, Hassan Adel, a prominent lawyer, stated that the resolutions by the United Nations support national liberation movements de facto in their struggle for independence, self-determination, including armed struggle. So by your position that you're adopting, you are essentially saying, in a manner of speaking, I'll let you respond to this because we have to move on in the stream as well. You're essentially saying that the Palestinians have no right to struggle. The Palestinians have no right to independence. The Palestinians have no right to self-determination, nor have they any kind of right to self-armed struggle. If you look at the United Nations General Assembly Resolution number 2105 of 1965, it condemned explicitly all kinds of manifestations of colonialism. And in fact, it prescribed the idea that the people who are subjected to settler colonialism, which Israel is, have full material support should be given to them for them to be targeted and in regard to such forms of imperial settlement. So in other words, they have a right to resistance, forcible resistance, and the right to self-determination. You are saying, in light of the fact that they are being killed, well, it's all Hamas's fault. Hamas shouldn't have done what they did on October 7th. And the fact is that they should just now move to another country to stop the killing. The only reason Hamas did what they did on October 7th was that they could be in a better position to barter for the release of Palestinian hostages that are being kept in detention in Israeli dungeons. Children as young as 11 and 12. And in the first week, Hamas told Israel, we said, look, we've got these hostages. We are willing to release them. Will you, in equal measure, release the Palestinian prisoners that have been kept in dungeons? That was refused by Israel. So Hamas has been basically going every step of the way to compromise and, in fact, offer their full particular support to say, look, we want a ceasefire. A couple of weeks back, they agreed to the ceasefire. Again, Israel refused. Israel wants to use Hamas as a convenient excuse for its total elimination of the Palestinian people. So it's an excuse.
Right. So just
Hamas not done what they did on October. Just one point, one last point. Had Hamas not did what they did on October 7th, Israel would have looked for another excuse to go and take over Gaza and totally get rid of the Palestinians. It's got nothing to do with Hamas. It's got everything to do with the destruction of the Palestinian people.
Right. So thank you. Because the last couple of things that you've just said there, what you've basically said is that Israel wants to get rid of them and they would have used any excuse.
At all costs. At all costs.
At all costs. Okay. Which goes back to the point that now Hamas has given them the golden opportunity now. Okay. So all of this stuff that you were mentioning about rights and all of this, you know what it is? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about their human rights. Nobody cares about the regulations. Everything that you mentioned, the UN said this. Nobody cares, do they? Because if they cared...
Why don't they care? Why don't they care? Because they're inherently evil. Well, why don't they care?
Well, there you go then. You're answering your own questions. So if you're believing that all of these people are inherently evil, if you're believing that they were going to
Are they not inherently evil? Okay, are they not inherently evil?
Okay, whatever. Listen, I'm not... Whatever. You're already... What you're doing there, Yusuf, is you're already admitting that they're not going to play fair, they're not going to play ball, they're not going to respect their human rights, they're not going to respect the United Nations. You already admitted that. So now the situation that you've got is that they're not going to release any prisoners, they're not going to stop the bombing, they're not going to give them their land, they're not going to give... This is what you're telling me. So all I'm saying, well, if it's that bad and they're just going to die and get bombed, then to save their lives, which is a farce, to save their lives, they
martyrs. You know, they're martyrs. They're classified.
Hang on, mate. Hang on. To change their strategy, to keep the children alive, to keep themselves alive, they should change their strategy. And instead of trying to fight Israel, they should do something else and maybe move.
Like what? Like what? Like leave the land? What should they do? Instead of fighting Israel, what should they do?
Well, if I was there, I would be trying my best to get out of there. I would be trying to leave.
Okay.
What would you be doing?
But that's their land. So it's their land. They must get out of their land.
It's tough, isn't it? It's tough. It's look, you gave me what's the other lad called? He gave me an example. If people came into my house and I've got my wife and kids and they came and took over the house, and I said to you, but I'd get in the car and I'd go. What would you do?
What about to take your car? I would stand there and fight.
Is that what you do?
So you right?
My wife will help me and start. My kids will join in and all.
Right. So hang on a minute. How's the fight going? If you were going to stand there and fight, that would be a genocide, wouldn't it?
And people trying to take my property. I'm defending my property.
So listen, if somebody came to take your property, right, and you've got a choice between dying for your property or running and saving your life and the lives of your children, I'd be running and saving my life and the lives of my children every day of the week, twice on Sunday.
You'll leave your wife and your children there.
See what I mean? See what you're doing there. Don't try to get clever, right? Listen.
I'm asking you a question.
Hang on. Don't get too excited. Listen. I said saving lives. Okay. So let's make it clear. So don't put in 1 second. Right, just make it clear.
By the way, Safraz, it's actually our show.
Hang on. Listen,
we've got people backstage.
Hang on.
Just hang on. We want to.
See, you won't let me finish now, will you? Right, let me finish.
No, I will let you finish. We've given you more than half an hour. We've given you.
Yeah, but you won't let me finish. Hang on. Somebody comes to your house. Yeah, somebody comes to your house. You've got two choices: stay and defend your property with the likelihood of dying, or save your children and your wife and all your family members and make an exit. I would be choosing to save my family members and make an exit every day of the week. And it sounds like what you were saying is that the kids can die, the wife can die, everybody can die because it's your house and you've got the right to your house. So that's what I disagree with.
We'll be classified as martyrs.
So I get your point. So basically, then I think I want to find the points.
If you're going to be classified as a martyr, then what you're doing there? On the one hand, you're celebrating this genocide, then, aren't you? You know, yes, you are, because you're saying that. He's celebrating as martyrs. That's not the right attitude. People are getting blown to bits.
I don't think that's the point he was making. He's not celebrating; it's incidental. But a martyr is a high stage. But I just want to try and get this so that we have a mutual ground. I think it appears to me then that our solutions to the problem are different. So if I want to get this clear, so I can get this clear I want to find common ground between you and me and Brother Muhammad. And the common ground is that you agree with the first point that Israel is committing genocide. You obviously said Hamas did something which was stupid, but you agree Israel's committing genocide. You agree Israel's an apartheid state. You agree that it's taken and stolen land. You agree that they were killing, even before the October 7th, they were killing Palestinians. But your response is that because the Palestinians are oppressed and subjected to the brutality of Israel, they should hence get out of the land. That's your argument. Am I correct? I want to find common cause between us, because I can understand the position, that the solution that you make.
One thing that you've just one thing.
But can you agree on the first 4 points that I raised with you?
Only if the fifth one's agreed, and the fifth one is.
What's the fifth one? What's the fifth one?
The fifth one is the way things are continuing now. They're just dying, and it doesn't look like that's going to slow down or change. So based on that,
that's fine.
That's
fine.
So yeah, I agree.
Do you accept that on a legal principle and on a moral premise, the state of Israel has got no right to exist? Do you accept that at least?
No. Why do they have no right to exist?
Because number one, when it was formed under international law, it was not formed in accordance with the United Nations resolutions. Number two, it imposes any state which involves, in terms of international law, engages in a legal system of apartheid, de facto loses its automatic right to exist. So I think that's the main point. So if you're an occupying,
I don't know about the legalities. I don't know about.
No. I'll tell you I'm telling you the legalities. Is settler colonialism. Israel has been declared as the last remaining settler colonial state in the 21st century today, as it stands. So it's an apartheid state. It was formed not according to the United Nations resolution. So in other words, the United Nations offered the Palestinians, I think, 47% and Israel 56%. Israel bombed itself into existence by taking close to 80% of the land and giving 20% to the Palestinians. In 1967, it then occupied the West Bank and it occupied the Gaza Strip. All that principle is illegal under international law. So if a state is formed illegally, it de facto automatically, in terms of the international applicability of international legal principles, it automatically de facto loses its right to exist. Now, but what I mean by that I don't mean that now the Israelis who are staying there, are born there, need to be killed and anything along that line. What I'm saying is that the Israeli state as an entity, as a legal body, is illegal. It's de facto an invalid state. It's an occupying power. And hence that occupying power has to end. My problem with your argument is that you are stating that by the Palestinians moving out to do away with the aspect of the immediate killing, but at the same time, it's illegal, apartheid-like invalid status still continues. So what you are basically stating is that the oppressor then basically wins at the end of the day. By taking the step that you are taking,
hang on a minute,
the oppressor wins. You are saying the oppressor wins.
Well, listen to this. Who's winning right now?
Well, Israel is losing. Israel, I would say, I'll give you an answer to that. I would say that Israel has lost in international world opinion. It's now a pariah state. It's a state that is on trial for genocide before the international court.
So on the ground, right, in that land, you've got Israelis on one side, you've got Palestinians on the other side. Who's winning and who's losing on the ground reality? I
would say Israel is losing. The reason I would say Israel is losing, but they've killed. I'll tell you why. Number one, of course, they've slaughtered many Palestinian babies and children. But the objective which they painted to the world in terms of why they attacked and invaded Gaza was that they were going to get back the hostages and that they were going to get rid of Hamas. They've lost on those two grounds. Hamas is as active as possible in central Gaza and even in the north, where they initially chased the Palestinians down to
what
Rafah.
Good? To what good? Why are we complaining?
No. Let me finish the point. So they've lost against Hamas. Hamas is active. Hezbollah is active in Lebanon, and they haven't got the hostages. In fact, the legal B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights organization, has made the point that in Israel's carpet bombing campaign, they've killed and murdered their own civilian hostages, like those naked men. You remember those naked men of the Israeli hostages? Israel shot them dead in cold blood. They came naked, carrying a flag stating, "Help us, help us." The Israeli soldiers shot them dead. So Israel has...
Well, I'll have to disagree with you. I'll have to disagree with you.
Okay, so Fraz,
hang on.
We've got to move on.
What will you not agree with?
The Palestinians who will die. It's the Palestinian children.
I know that. I know, and that's bad. We know that.
This doesn't look like winning to me.
They haven't achieved the objective.
They don't look like the winning side. The
Yeah,
Palestinians
their
definitely
objective
don't look
was
like.
to get rid. Okay, but Safaraz, let's get this clear. The objective was to get rid of Hamas. Have they succeeded? Number one. Number two, the objective was to get the hostages back. Have they succeeded? No. So they've lost on the 2 counts, and Netanyahu wants the war to continue to save his political office. That's the whole point.
Right, listen. You're
Safraz,
confusing.
Safraz,
Listen,
I do.
Yusuf, you're confusing yourself here now.
Safraz, we have to
they want
move
that
on.
whole land.
Yusuf, we have to move on.
Right.
Because there's people
Earlier on, you were saying that they want the whole land. Now, right now, you're saying they failed. Does this look like a failure? Look what they've done to Gaza. They've blown it to bits. How many more kids have to die before you can realize that this has backfired on Hamas? Hamas are getting their ass kicked. The Palestinians are getting genocided and butchered. And if you're saying the Palestinians are winning,
But Hamas is not getting their ass kicked.
What are you complaining for?
Hamas is not getting their backside kicked.
Oh, hang on a minute. When all these Palestinian kids are dying, that doesn't affect Hamas.
I want you to look. I want you to look at a website when we go. We obviously got limited time now. Called the Electronic Intifada. It's done by Westerners, where they give copious evidence after evidence how Hamas is ambushing these rogue Israeli soldiers and getting rid of them.
But
yes,
hang on a minute. I'm getting confused here.
Children.
So, are you saying everything's going well? This thing for Hamas and the Palestinians is actually going well. It's going in their favor. Because I'm thinking there's a genocide going on here and people are dying and there's going to be no Palestinians left. That's what I'm thinking here. But you seem to be thinking that this is going well and Israel's losing. So we've got 2 different realities going on here.
Well. Let me give you an example here before you leave the stream. I want to.
I'm not going anywhere until you kick me off.
No. I want to share this with you. This is not by me, brother Safraz. If I can just share this. Have you got that? Can you see the screen there? It's basically, this is a recent report. This was on the 24th of April. 200 days of war in Gaza. What Israel has succeeded is they succeeded in mass killing babies and children, being the bastard regime it is. But 200 days of war, Israel has already lost strategically and operationally. So strategically, they stated they wanted to get rid of Hamas. Operationally, they stated they wanted to get the hostages back. They've lost on those 2 counts. The aim of the war. They obviously didn't want to present to the world that look, they want to kill Palestinians.
Yusuf, you need to listen to yourself, bro. This sounds ridiculous. Do you know what this sounds like?
Let's read this. According to this, and this is not me.
What do you mean? Read this. Listen, how many Palestinians have been killed since October?
We know that. We know that. This is
how can you look at these reports and say, "Oh, they never got the objective"?
Safraz, just hear me out. I don't want you to run away. I don't want you to run. Just read this.
Hang on a minute, run away. Listen, you're going to kick me off in a bit.
This is political analyst. Andres Krieg, from a senior lecturer at the School of Security Studies, your country again, at King's College in London, and he says
wrong.
He says. Essentially, Israel has lost the war strategically because there will be no way to defeat Hamas militarily without a political strategy. Netanyahu needs to show the Israeli public that he won the war, which is going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible. Speaking about Israel's military aims, international group crisis Jules Hilsterman said, it certainly hasn't delivered on the objectives that Netanyahu set for himself, which was the destruction of Hamas. Whether this will be achieved is also not clear. He added that American and Israeli intelligence reports are now pointing out that it will not be possible. All Israel has succeeded in is murdering babies, women, civilians, and children. That's not a victory for Israel.
But it's a loss for Palestine, isn't it?
That's not a victory for Israel. That shows the world how evil and satanic Israel is. In fact, he says here, Krieg said, Netanyahu didn't generate a political strategy until now. There is no strategy of what would happen after the war. A war or military action is always a tool for politicians to achieve essentially political outcomes and objectives, he said, adding that Israel has simply not used its military.
Okay, listen, if you're saying,
it's lost the war.
Okay, listen. If you're saying that it's a loss on the Israeli side, then I'll say to you, it's a lose-lose because it's also not a win on the Palestinian side. The devastation on the Palestinian side is hundreds, if not thousands or hundreds of thousands times worse than any of the stuff that you just mentioned there. One individual's political career means absolutely nothing compared to all the blood that's been spilled in Palestine. So the way you counting what is a win and what is a loss is to me, I just think it's absurd and pathetic.
The whole world is
This
saying
is-
that. Share the screen.
It doesn't
Share the
matter who's
screen,
saying
brother.
that. What matters?
Brother,
Hang on a minute, right? Hang on a minute, right? I'll tell you two right now, right? Let's just say you two have got 4 or 5 kids each, and let's just say you've got
Yeah.
a wife, right? If you two were both next door neighbors and you went home and all your kids were dead and your wives were dead, and there's about 15 dead bodies in your family there, and on the other hand, the people who have bombed you, the person who's in charge of bombing might lose his position and somebody else might be in charge of the bombing next year. Are you going to turn around and say, you know what, we're winning here because he's going to lose his position? You're not winning, you're losing.
I would pick up arms and I'll find the bastards who come into my house and killed my kids and my wife. That's what I would do.
You find them.
Would you not try to?
Would
you not try to save them first?
The last thing. This is from the Arab Center of Washington.
I wouldn't use them as a human shield
7
in the
months
first
of
place.
war on Gaza. Israel is in international distress. You're saying they're winning. The Israeli government has described the war in Gaza as an existential war and a second war of independence. They are describing it as an existential war, meaning a war without end. They will never win. Israel's officials and public were to eliminate her. Their main aim was to eliminate Hamas.
In the first
Hamas.
half an hour, 45 minutes of this program, including every video that you've shown, including every video that you've shown, and especially in the first half an hour, 45 minutes of this program, everything that you've said is about the genocide and the atrocity that the Israelis are doing.
Yeah.
How they're taking land, how they're suffocating the Palestinians, how they're killing children. This is everything that you've been saying, and now you turn around saying that, it's going well for the Palestinians. Well, that's
I never
stupid.
said that. Don't
They're
put
not winning,
words
are
in
they?
my mouth. Not for us. I never said that. I
Come
never
on.
said it's gone well for. Did I say it's gone well for the Palestinians? Please, for us. Don't put words in my mouth. What I said. Let me spell out so that you don't misquote me in the future, even on our group. What I said was Israel set out to achieve 2 objectives in this attack and genocide on Gaza. One was to destroy Hamas, and 2 was to basically get the hostages. They failed on both those counts. What they've succeeded in achieving is showing the entire world what a monster they are. What a monster they are in that they engage in sanguinary mass murder, shooting babies dead, blowing up hospitals, blowing up schools, blowing up educational facilities. That's what they've been successful in. Now, that's not, a normal person, a normal, decent human being will not see that as a win on his side. If I, for example, go out and I'm dissatisfied with society and I massacre a whole lot of individuals, maybe 100 people on the street, I may see that as a win personally, but from a theoretical point of view, it's a loss because I'm totally lost. So Hamas, what Israel has, just to understand this point, is that Israel claimed and they told the world they are out to rescue the hostages and they're out to destroy Hamas. On both those counts, they have failed. Now, this is not to say that the Palestinians are not suffering. Of course, they are suffering. But my point is that Israel has not won this war. They have basically become a pariah in the international world. No one wants to see Palestinian civilians and babies being killed. Of course, we are the ones that have been speaking about this every damn week. But the point I'm saying is that Israel cannot see that as a victory. Rather, it should be seen as a shame and have it exposed to the world what a monster this particular evil satanic regime is. That's the point I'm making. So I've never said
we'll end there. So
winning.
On the other side, you said that what Hamas wanted to do is take the hostages.
We got to move on now because there's other people patiently waiting for about an hour now. Safraz, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for that, Safraz.